Birds, people, and the dogs that bring them together. This is episode number 27. My name is Bill, and you're tied to the Wool Post. Well, we are deep in puppy training here in Central Indiana at our home and kennel with the two small Munsterlander puppies. We've got Jax, who's about 13 weeks old right now, and Covey, who's coming into her 12th week. Let's see, both puppies, I would say, are 100% on crate training. They're about 75% on housebreaking. Looking forward to that being 100%. They're about 50% on recall, doing really well on that, I think, for such young puppies. Both puppies are swimming whenever they want to, whenever I ask them to. They're doing really well in the water. On their manners, they're 100% for me. With others, not so much. They're still jumping on some people. We're working on that. I know that my wife Sarah's she's doing a really good job with it, but she's getting a little frustrated with the puppies jumping on her. I'm also working on standing. That'll lead to their woe training later. I'd say they're about 25% on that. We've only been working on that for just a couple of days now. And then walking on a loose leash, Jax, maybe just being a week older, maybe just a little bit more mature. He's really at about the 75% solution on that. Covey, I would generously say 25% for her. It could honestly be less than that for Covey. She's pretty excitable and pretty impatient. If you're interested in following along with the puppy training, check us out on Facebook or Instagram at the Wool Post. And most of you already know that Jax, the male small Munsterlander, like I said, about 13 weeks old, and he is going to be available as a started dog. If you're interested in him, check us out on Facebook or Instagram at the Wool Post, or contact me, Bill at thewoolpost.com. If you'd like to contribute financially to the podcast, you could become a patron at patreon.com/thewoolpost. I'm very thankful for the patrons that we do have, and we could use a few more. Every little bit helps. Known as a gray ghost, Weimaraners were created in the early 1800s as a hunting dog for German aristocrats. Originally used to hunt bears, mountain lions, and wolves, noblemen began using Weims on game birds once a larger game became less prevalent. The breed arrived in the United States in the 1920s and gained popularity a few decades later with celebrity owners such as President Eisenhower and Grace Kelly. Weimaraners are friendly and obedient. They're affectionate and form a strong bond with their owners. They are not good kennel dogs. They're known for their distinctive, short, silvery gray coat. Males stand 25 to 27 inches tall at about 70 to 90 pounds. Females 23 to 25 inches tall at about 55 to 75 pounds. It's common for Weimaraners from hunting lines to be significantly smaller than that. Today we're talking with esteemed Weimaraner breeder Camille Rice of Timberdoodle Weims, who has owned, hunted over, and bred them almost her entire life. Camille, thanks for being on the show.
Hi.
Can you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Camille Rice, and my kennel is Timberdoodle Weimaraners, along with my co-breeder Mindy Brown, who is not here today.
I'm not going to let you get off that easy. You're not just Camille Rice from Timberdoodle Weims. All right, so I think your history goes a little deeper than that.
I've been around a while. Been in the Weimaraner breed pretty much my whole life. My parents had them before I was born. I was raised with a Weimaraner breed. There was a period of time when I did not hunt much. I was showing horses actively. So at that point in time, I didn't have a Weim. But for the most part, I've had them most of my life, and I'm up there. So
we've actually had several women on the podcast that either took a break from dogs and raised trained horses, or actually started raising, training, or riding horses and then transitioned over to dogs.
I actually did all of those things as well. I grew up with horses as well. Trained my own horses from the time I was about 10 years old. So as an adult, when I was showing horses actively, I was actually, breeding horses, raising the foals up to be 2 or 3, starting them under saddle, and then I'd move them on as a started project. Sometimes they were finished. And then life changes happen, ended up divorced, ended up getting remarried. My husband at the time loved the breed. Really didn't know my history with the breed because that was something he knew I was a horse person because that's what I was doing then. He wanted a Weim. So I told him I was raised with the breed and I'm really worried about getting a Weim right now because during my years of growing up with very well bred Weims, I ended up with a rescue at some point in time, and that dog was insane. It was nutty. It was just literally not the breed, nothing of the dogs I was raised with, nothing like that. So we kept the dog and did the best we could, but the dog was so mentally unstable that it never really lived a normal life. I mean, it was in a crate a lot because it was just such a like oaf in the house and terrible manners, all those things. So I was worried when my husband wanted to get a Weim. What am I going to do here? I don't know any of the breeders. I don't know anyone. I reached out to the local Weim club. No one ever responded back to me. And then my husband at the time, reaches out and says, "Hey, there's this ad in Michigan Outdoors. Why don't you call?" And so I did, and I ended up getting hooked up with Gray Angel Kennel, who turned out to have some really, really nice dogs. And we got Cody then. She was Gray Angel Kodiak too. Cody was just a phenomenal bird dog right out of the box. I mean, she was a natural stop to flush, natural backer, gorgeous on point, great house dog, just a wonderful, wonderful dog. And that was the first bitch of mine that started my breeding program and started Timberdoodle Kennels as an adult. So she was just a wonderful dog. She passed away just shy of 14. In fact, 10 years ago this year. And she was like set the bar for all the rest of my dogs. I've had some great dogs since her. She definitely left her legacy and produced a daughter that was incredible, that produced another daughter that was incredible that I took to the Invitational 10 years ago. So I've had some great dogs and I'm very proud of what we're producing, both Mindy and I.
When you started out or started back with Weims Part 2,
Mhm.
did you plan on breeding them or did you just kind of get lucky with a great bitch and say, you know what, she's got the genes for the breed, let's keep them going?
So it's kind of funny that you say that because I'm actually kind of been that person. I had a breeding farm with my horses, and I figured we would probably do some breeding at some point in time if she proved herself, and she did. I owned her solely from Gray Angel Kennel. So when it was time to breed her, I did reach out to her breeder and asked what they thought and went through that process. And then after that, I was pretty much on my own. Karen Mayo, who was Gray Angel, she was older and she was not in the best of health. And, she eventually passed away. So I started, what I was doing on my own. But I'm one of the few kennels that actually started with a bitch from Gray Angel.
Did you continue that line or did you go and just start building your own line?
I did start to go build my own line because I knew that there were some things that, well, there's always things to improve upon. You never have the perfect dog. We all know this.
Right.
Every dog, like Cody did not have a natural water love. And at that point in time, I did all the hunt tests and I was in AKC events. I hadn't really known much about NAVDA back then. This is a long time ago. And so we were doing like putting on hunt tests and also involved in field trials but I we duck hunted too. So Cody's water love wasn't natural. I mean, I had to work really hard to get her in the water, and I really wanted more of a hard charging water dog. So I bred her to a male, and in fact, every male that I bred her to, water love was a huge factor. Like that was a question that I asked every stud owner: what type of water love does your male have? And I always wanted to meet the dog. In fact, I've never really bred to a dog that I have not met except for one over the years, and he was deceased when I ended up buying the frozen semen. So water love was a big thing. I wanted to make sure that we had more natural water dogs, and we did get that. So that's something that I still continue with NAVDA. You want water loving dogs. I've had a few litters where it seems like if the owners force the swimming that they'll struggle a little bit. But for the most part, all the dogs in my house, that I have now were really natural water dogs.
Awesome. Yeah, so I actually just did a breeding seminar last night, and Laura Reeves was running the seminar, and she talked about the difference between genotypical traits and phenotypical
Hmm.
traits. And so now I have a better understanding of, before I would have just said, oh, those there are temperamental characteristics, and then there are these physical and structural characteristics. So I think so now I'm thinking about in my mind it's a different framework of these genotypical characteristics that of
Hmm.
course are genetic health, but then also the things we can't see like temperament, like swimming
Correct.
aptitude
That's
or
a biggie
swimming
for us too.
desire. Sure.
Yeah, temperament's a big one.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know. I don't know enough to qualify as a nerd yet, but I feel like I want to be a nerd in my brain on
You'll
on
get there
genetics.
eventually.
I hope
You'll
so.
get there eventually. Yeah, you will. It takes some time though to get it all straight. Like Mindy
Right.
will bring up a dog and I'll say, I'll pop up, oh yeah, that was so and so and so and so and cross back to so and so. And she's like, what are you, Rain Man? How do you remember this? And I'm like, I have no idea how I remember all this, but I do. And it's just bizarre. So, but
I,
you have to start picking it all up and putting it all together.
Folks that have been doing it for a long time have just a different way of remembering things. I talked to Bob
Right.
Ferris a few weeks ago, or I think maybe
Hmm.
just 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about the registered name of a dog that he tested in like their early 90s or something like that. I'm like, how do you like I barely remember I don't remember the registered name of my one breeding female's sire. Like I remember his call name, but I just don't remember. But this one dog that he judged in an OBDA test, in the 90s or whatever, and he knows it. That's just wild to me. I don't
Yeah, you get like that.
That's scary.
Yeah, look what you have to look forward to.
Right? I know.
Yeah.
Early on with Weims, were you hunting back then?
Yeah, I did. My mom hunted too. So, I was raised around in a hunting environment. Dad hunted, mom hunted, grandma hunted, but more like squirrels and stuff. She wasn't really a bird hunter, but my mom was a bird hunter. So I grew up watching the dogs my parents had hunt birds. Even before was old enough to carry a shotgun, I'd walk with them and watch the dogs. And Weims back then were really natural bird dogs. I didn't know anything about hunt tests or field trials, any of those things way back when. I'd never even heard of such a thing. I knew, and field trials were probably alive and well back then. We just didn't do it. We just hunted our dogs. And back then, I grew up in a suburb of Detroit. You could literally leave your house and be in fields to hunt in 5 minutes, and there would be pheasants there. So they were everywhere, and then of course the habitat started disappearing and so on and so forth. And it's all urban down there. I drive down there. I have family in the area still, and I'll see places that we hunted that are now strip malls and fast food joints. And this is not even the same as when I grew up.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. I
Hmm.
heard somewhere that the highest concentration of pheasants in the country is actually in one of the industrial regions in Detroit, though.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
I retired from the Michigan State Police, and I worked in Detroit for 3 years. And I can remember sitting at the Lodge, which is a freeway, and I-94. There was like this little spot you could pull in, and there were roosters cackling all over the place at just before dawn. And a friend of mine ran a business, a lawn business, and he said, he'd go cut yards and alleys in Detroit. He said you'd see pheasants running all over the place right in the city of Detroit. So yeah, no, they survived there.
Well, good for them, and they'll die of old age with
Yep, they sure
ta
will.
tails that are 3 feet long or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
true.
Living their best ghetto life, I guess.
That's right. Up and down the alleys.
Oh my goodness. So I'm not going to ask you how you got into Weimaraners because you were born into
Correct.
Weimaraners. Have you owned any other dogs?
I own some herding dogs. I've never owned another hunting dog. My husband had a lab, ex-husband, but he had a lab for a while. But other than that, no, so that's the thing about this breed. It has gone through so many ups and downs and so many popularity moments that were not good for the breed. So when I got back into it, it was so hard to find a true hunting wine that I decided then that was what I was going to do. I was going to stick to this breed, do whatever I could to produce good hunting dogs to put in the hands of hunters. And I still do that. Mindy and I talk about it all the time. I'm nothing against show people because a lot of my dogs have show bloodlines in them to keep the conformation there.
Hmm.
But for a hunter to just actually go out and buy a solid hunting dog with a good temperament and healthy, good luck. Because if you're not willing to wait for the 2 or 3 breeders that actually really get out there, and I mean some dabble, but I'm a serious grouse hunter. In the fall, that's what I hunt. I'm out there all the time, and I also guide pheasant hunts at a local preserve. So I'm out there a lot. So to me, it's buy it from a hunter. I've always said that, and I always take heat from the show crowd. I don't mean them any disrespect or anything like that, because good conformation is important, but so is keeping the hunt in a breed that was bred to be a hunting dog. And I'm very passionate about that, if you can't tell.
Kind of can a little bit. You know, I tell people to, I'm not a show owner, not a show handler or anything like that. I do show my breeding stock in IABCA because I
Hmm.
get good structural feedback, confirmation feedback, written feedback from a judge. That's important for
Right.
me, right?
It's important for any breed, really, but you can't go extreme either way.
Right.
You've still got to keep the hunt in a hunting breed, and you still got to keep conformation. And they might not be, like the show dogs that we see are huge, and none of my dogs are really huge. Like the female that I'm running taking to the invitational is a smaller bitch, like she's barely 50 pounds. And my male, I have a 4-year-old male who's like 65 pounds, and then I have an 11-year-old male who's 65 pounds. So these are not huge dogs,
Right.
but they are well conformed. I mean, I look at the angles of their hocks, I look at the way they move in the yard. Those things are very, very important to me. I want to make sure that we are producing dogs that can hunt all day if they have to.
And what for the show dogs, we're really seeing Weimaraners in the 70 to 80 pound range, aren't we?
Correct. They're huge. Yeah, they're big.
Yeah,
They're
big,
big.
big dogs. I had a
Yep.
friend who had
Big
a
dogs.
Weimaraner that did not come from hunting background, and he was, I mean, just a huge, huge dog. I don't have a lot of experience with field Weimaraners. Never hunted over one, actually. So if you have a potential puppy buyer that's coming in and saying, "Hey, I'm interested in a Weimaraner. What can you tell me about the breed?"
I get those phone calls constantly. And I talk about the breed. They're not for everybody. I will tell you that. They are not kennel dogs. Mine are not. They are house dogs. They're bred to be family pets, members of your family. They're going to love your children. I do highly recommend crate training. If you're going to have them in your house, have them in a crate. Make sure that they're in that crate when you're home so that they don't associate that with you leaving. They're somewhat of a Velcro dog. They're not, like I say, if you want an independent dog that's going to just live in a kennel and you're going to take it out a couple times a year to hunt, these are not the right breed for you. In fact, there's a guy that they come here to train. I have a place here. We have a lot of events at my place, and we do a lot of training days here. And this guy came here, and he recently bought a long-haired Hungarian Vizsla, and he got it from Hungary, actually. And
Wow.
he talked to me about Weims like last year. I don't remember this conversation, but he brought it up not that long ago, and he said, you are the only person who told me not to get a Weim. He says, I'm a duck hunter. He goes, everybody's trying to pitch their breeds. And he goes, you looked me right in the face and said, don't get a Weim. They can't hold up in that cold. If it's late season, why? And he said that really meant something to him. And I said, well, because I'm not trying to sell you a dog, period. You got the right breed for you. You got the long haired Vizsla, and it's like they've got a thicker coat. So perfect breed for him.
It's important to be honest, and as
Hmm.
as breeders, I think it's paramount for us to do the right thing by the dog first and foremost.
Correct.
It shouldn't be about selling dogs. It should be about
No, it's not.
placing dogs in the right homes.
Correct. Every time I place a litter, and Mindy and I both stress about this, like you can't, I mean, we put probably almost like psychotic, thinking about who's going where. You'll have some families that can't handle the off the charts one that's, off in my yard. I have huge yards that's off like on its own at 4 weeks old, and you got to go find this puppy because it's off hunting on its own. That's not the right dog for some people. It would be the right dog for me, but I look at homes like that. Like that's how I pick like who can handle this puppy who's so independent. I mean, they're always going to come when you call them and things like that, but some of them are just far more independent than the others. So that's my kind of dog.
So speaking of that, then, so obviously, would at the 8+ week range when you're getting ready to send those puppies home, do you as a breeder and you with your partner, do you decide which puppy goes
Yes.
to which
Yes.
home?
Yes.
Excellent.
And yeah, we absolutely do that. And I tell them, I'm with them 24/7. I can tell you everything about these puppies from the moment they get up in the morning to who puts themselves to bed at night. I'm with them all the time. So I know the ones and I get to know the families and we talk a lot. I send a lot of videos out to the people that are on my list or people have deposits and let them know, I'm kind of leaning towards this one. And sometimes that'll change. I usually don't say anything about who's going where until about week 7. By that time, I have a pretty good handle on who's going where and why. Yeah, we take that real serious. And everybody makes mistakes. Of course, I've made mistakes over the years, but for the most part, very few.
At least with your breed, all the puppies generally look the same. You don't have a whole lot of physical difference. There may be some size and shape, but coloring is gonna be pretty much exactly the same.
Yeah, that's never a factor. Like I guess it is in some other breeds, like the wires. If you got, they want a roan or they want a liver or whatever they want. In our case, no, they all are silver, so it really doesn't matter. Basically, you're looking at temperament, who's got like the independence, things like that. Who's going to climb my stairs first and then come tumbling down and then just walk it off. So yeah, that's the type of stuff we look for.
I should have thought about that before I settled on small Munsterlanders because it's easy to look at it. They're all so different. It's easy to look at them
Mhm.
and find the paint job that you like before you even know the
Yeah.
dog.
Well, a lot of people people call up, well, I don't want any white. And we don't have that much white, but occasionally there'll be a puppy with like a little splash on its chest. And I'm like, that it's normal in Germany. I mean, lots of German Weims have a little bit of white. So doesn't mean anything else. It's a common trait in Weims. There are some that have a lot of white, and then you kind of wonder about that. But if there's just a little splash, it's probably nothing.
Right. Right. We have these spaniel markings. A lot of small Munsterlanders will have all brown heads, but you'll have
Hmm.
maybe about a quarter of them will have the spaniel blaze down the
Right.
middle. And the cool thing is that's a dog that's bringing out some really, really old genes, right? Because
Hmm.
those spaniels, that's what made the dogs back in
Right.
1600s or something like that.
Right. Right. Right.
But you don't see a lot of that anymore. So there are a lot of people that like it for the nostalgia. I don't know. This is terrible for me to say this as a breeder, but I look at it and I'm just like, I just don't find it attractive.
It's not really terrible at all because I tend to not really like a lot of white. Like I'll deal with
Sure,
the splash, but if there's a big patch of it, I have a hard time getting around that. And that's just me. It doesn't mean a thing. It's just me. So we all
sure.
have our little quirks as far as what we
Yeah,
like and what we don't like.
right. What about so special needs for Weims? I mean, with the field bred Weims, I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're probably pretty healthy dogs. And I know that some of the show line dogs have some issues, though.
I think there are issues everywhere. And again, I will say that we genetically test for everything we possibly can. We embark DNA, we do all of
Hmm.
those things. I wouldn't say that either side is any healthier than the other. Because I've known some field lines that have had some problems, and I've known some show lines that have had some problems. So, the biggest key is to not, to do whatever you can to not have health issues. And that's honesty on both sides of everyone, like the stud owner. If you ask questions like, if you've seen any of this, you've seen any of that, I expect an honest answer. And that's a problem that I think is maybe not just to Wimes. People have to admit what they're seeing. You can't fix it unless if you don't know it's there. That's the bottom line. So that's kind of a pet peeve of mine. My very first Lyme litter had a condition called spinal dysraphism, and the original breeder had seen that, and of course, it was all hidden. And I still am salty about that. That was 20 plus years ago. So I'm still a little annoyed that we spent $3,000 on a spinal tap and an MRI, and they had seen this before. They could have told me in the parking lot what it was, and instead I spent a lot of money to find out what exactly it was. So yeah, I believe in honesty on both sides. It has to be.
And 20 years ago, you weren't finding that by way of genetic testing. You were finding that by way of the dog being symptomatic.
Yep, symptomatic. And I did a ton of research where I looked at pedigrees and looked at pedigrees and looked at pedigrees trying to figure it out where it came from. And my best guess, and because my dogs were also the dogs that were still living at the time, were part of the actual genetic testing to find a marker for that.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, the ones that were still living, they asked, and I said, sure, I've got these dogs, and we got them all tested. They did find a marker, and I'm not 100% sure that that is the only strain of spinal dysraphism, but that's my opinion, and it just is what it is. But yeah, it was a hard lesson, especially as an adult. And Cody was a phenomenal bitch, and to have her first litter have that was just crushing. But I moved on, bred her again. Puppies were all fine. Bred her a third time. Puppies were all fine. So we assume the male was probably a carrier or affected very mildly.
Sure.
But the
Right.
people, no one really knew what it was except for the original breeder, and she didn't help us. So,
Hmm. Yeah, with the tools that we have now, it's almost inexcusable. I mean, you spend as a breed, if you have a breeder account, you spend like $120
mhm.
and you have all of this information at your fingertips, and you can even have a counseling with the genetic specialist
Right,
to help you understand it. It's inexcusable if you're not using it in my mind. And then also it's inexcusable if you're not taking the information to make the right decisions. And unfortunately,
correct.
I had to pass on a stud that's a really, really good dog, but he was a carrier for
Mhm.
um a certain disease that I won't get into too much, but it was an issue of I can choose this other dog right here who's just as good and he's not a carrier. So even knowing that my female's not a carrier and this dog is, and our puppies are going to be fine, half of them are going to be carriers or whatever,
Mhm.
none of them will be symptomatic. It doesn't matter. I can say no to the carrier. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's a smart decision. The dogs were equal in pretty much every other way otherwise. I don't feel like I'm
Right,
throwing the baby out with the bathwater in that situation.
right, right. It's important.
Absolutely. Now, you said you're going to the Invitational this year?
I am. This female just turned 7. She was actually ready to go 2 years ago, and she came into season 2 weeks before her test, which was she was early. I will not run a bitch in the season. I learned a long time ago that their head's not in the game. Don't waste your money. Some bitches are fine. I know mine, and I know it's never going to be the field. They're always going to be solid there. It's the water. For whatever reason, they don't put on a performance like they should. So I pulled her, sat out another year. She was ready. So I really didn't have to do a whole lot. I just kind of dusted her off and got her out there and did a few things. And she ended up prize one. So I was really proud of her. She's like, I don't know, my sixth or seventh generation. So, and what makes it really nice is that I took her grandmother to the Invitational 10 years ago this year. So 10 years ago we were there. So it's kind of I wasn't really didn't know if I really wanted to go to the invitational because it's a lot of work to prepare for, and we're training a lot, and we're doing everything. But then I thought, Royal and I failed on a real bizarre, quirky thing. So I decided I was going to give it a whirl, see if I can't do it 10 years later with her granddaughter.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
great. I'm gonna look on the roster and see what day you're running. You don't have to say it here, but I'm gonna go figure out what day you're running. I plan on going over to volunteer for at least a day, so I'm gonna see if I can do it on
That'd
the
be
day
cool.
where you're out there. My my adult female's sire is running as well, and I want to
Oh,
try and see
nice.
him too. So
Very
yeah,
nice.
I'm really pulling for him. So
Yeah, yeah, I would be too.
obviously,
That's great. Yeah, obviously.
right? So so grandma that you ran 10 years ago, was she a pass?
No, she was not. There was a problem at the blind that year. I didn't even know this happened um, until somebody told me, and this is years later. I just knew that I couldn't. She was drawn towards just couldn't get off. And I guess there were ducks by the honor by the retrieve.
Oh,
And so the wind was such, and now they've changed it. Like if the wind changes or something happens, they will give you a do over. Back then they didn't do that. And
oh,
I didn't
that's
know
good.
this is yeah, she ran on Sunday. She was just at the tail end of her heat cycle. So she ran on Sunday and it was just a quirk and a ton of people failed. So it was, weird. Everything else was great. They shot 9 birds over her because there were birds everywhere because it was Sunday. We had a great time. It was a great experience, but it was not ideal that
Sure,
day.
and that's a tough one too because that's the
Yep.
dog doing exactly what you would probably want the dog to do 364 days out of the year, right?
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? It was what it was. I was proud of her in every other way. There were only a few Weims there that year, and two of them I was the breeder of.
Oh wow.
Shelby also got hooked up in the same blind situation I did.
It
Shelby
sounds like a
actually
lot of
went
dogs
over to
probably
the
did.
it wasn't a good thing. I didn't realize it was that big of a deal until some guy called up and wanted to use my kennel name and his in the name of his dog. And he says, "Yeah." He goes, "I was part of that group in 2014 that failed at the blind." And I'm like, "Really? What?" And then he told me. That was the first I'd heard of it. So, but I guess it was a big deal.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, all right, so at the blinds, and obviously I've never run an invitational dog, but the way I understand it, you can kind of have two approaches, and you can give the dog a line and basically send it, or you can handle the dog. What's your approach?
So I've been trying the line, and I have worked a little handling in there as well. So there I've got a little bit more insurance than I had 10 years ago. But I have been working on lines.
Okay.
The one thing about this bitch though is she almost always takes this arc to the right, and then she gets out there and she corrects herself and just goes right towards the mark. So it's just an interesting, all dogs do weird stuff. We all know this. I
Yeah,
mean, and that's just her little quirky thing. So I'm still plugging away. I'm still trying to get the better line, and I'm doing a little handling. So if she gets too far off course, I'll correct her. But
sure.
typically she corrects herself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think that's a tough thing for us that, for those of us that test our dogs in NAVDA because me personally, as a trainer, I would not want to start handling my dogs until after utility because I don't want the dog turning and look back at me for direction during duck search, right?
yeah, yeah, that's a problem. So yeah, I wouldn't do that either. I don't do
Right.
that, in
No.
fact. No, no.
But then if you do have invitational goals, then you better get to work on handling like the day after you prize of
And
utility.
I actually started training last fall. So I was able to get some blind work in last fall. Her field work is what it is. I mean, she's not a natural backer. That's probably we're getting better, let's put it that way. She's a very competitive dog and she thinks very highly of herself, where her grandmother would back anything. And she's backing. I mean, she's doing it. But it was not natural. And I had natural backers for years and years and years, and this dog is not. Oddly enough, Mindy has her half sister and she is. So go figure.
Huh.
Who knows?
Yeah, she's just got the genes from the other side somewhere, I
Yep.
guess.
Yep.
What do you think your brace mate is thinking, when they find, okay, I'm braced with a Weimaraner, is that like, hey, this is awesome, I'm braced with a Weim, or is this like, oh, like a small Munsterlander for my dogs, for example, most people would be like, oh crap, I'm braced with a small
You
Munsterlander.
know, I don't know. I mean, there's some pretty nice knob to Wimes out there now.
Hmm.
So I really don't know what other people think. I
Yep.
know back in the day, you'd show up to a knob to test with a wine like 20 years ago, and you'd almost see the eye rolling like, oh boy, here we go, kind of thing. And it's not like that anymore. Like I've got a guy who bought a puppy from me. He's been a GSP guy for years, and he basically told me he's never seen a bad wine because of myself and Silver Shot that's in Michigan. So he said I've never seen a bad wine. So I didn't know what people were talking about when they said, they're this or they're that. He said I've never seen that. So that's kind of a nice thing when people say things like that.
Yeah.
I think I think there's been a huge improvement over the years that people are breeding. Like I actually breed for Navda. I didn't know about it years ago. I was more of a AKC person, but once I got into NAVDA and started running dogs through that system, I love it. I mean, I especially love training for the utility test. That's my favorite test of all. I just love that test Invitational just seems like it's grind work to me. Like it's a lot of reps, it's a lot of this, it's a lot of that. It's just doing things over. It's so to me, it's a lot more obedience and that type of thing. Where I'm training with a guy who has a utility dog right now, and it's really been fun to watch his dog. It's a poodle pointer turn on and turn into just a hell of a dog. Just really, really doing a good job. So I'll be at his test watching him. So yeah, I'm excited for them.
I'm having a lot of fun getting my female ready for utility, and I've really been able to watch her just open up through the duck search training. And now that
Hmm.
we're back into the field, she's gone from really hunting gun range and now when I release her, I send her in the field.
Hmm.
She's 200 plus yards out. So it's just
Yeah,
just
that's
really really fun to watch.
yeah, really having a ball with it.
Oh yeah. What can you tell us about your kennel besides, everybody else telling us that you're awesome?
Oh,
What do you think that makes you, what do
uh,
you do that makes you different?
well, like I said, I have strictly bred Weims. I don't have any other breeds. I really believe in the breed, and I know they literally have gone through some terrible times. Wegman didn't help, with the whole Sesame Street stuff. That was not good because people would get Weims not realizing that, these are hunting dogs. They might look cool on TV or, coloring or making cookies, at Christmas time and the Wegman videos, but these dogs are bird dogs. So that was a dark time. There was also the time like coming like the early 60s, late 50s, where they, were supposed to be the super dog. And so many of them were just bred. They went from, a few hundred to thousands bred in a year. And people just doing it for the money, the wonder dog, all the other things that they were doing. So that caused a huge problem with Weims ending up in rescue and the crazy Weim that I had, when my son was little, that was a problem. So I think people are being more conscientious about breeding in general these days. Like they're doing health testing. You're always going to find the person that's just putting a male and a female together with no regard to anything. But I think people are more serious about breeding and just not breeding to breed. Like the show people tend to breed, for the show stuff. And, there are people like me who will use show dogs because I definitely want to keep the conformation, but I don't want the size, if that makes any sense
Sure.
whatsoever.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's and as far as us, we breed to dogs that we think can produce the best knob to dogs that we can produce because that's what we do. And what was it, 5 years ago? I had and the Royal's kids, by the way, Royal produced 6 utility prize dogs. She produced, which is very impressive for any bitch.
Sure.
With
Yeah.
three different sires.
Oh,
I
wow.
take that back. Yeah, three different sires. So she produced 6 utility dogs. Um, she also produced a utility breeders award litter, and then two of those dogs went on to get the invitational breeders award. So that was a pretty cool thing. And there's still, yeah. So there's only been one. There was only been one utility breeders award, only one invitational breeders award, and she produced it. So she left a hell of a legacy.
What a resume, huh?
Yeah, yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. What an accomplishment. Is there a breed club for field Wimes, or does it all fall under one umbrella club?
So it's one umbrella club. There's a big split between field and show, huge. The field dogs are much smaller. They're I wouldn't say they're very pretty. The show dogs are, beautiful, but they're sometimes some of them don't hunt. So I'm one of the ones that walk in the middle because I do believe in confirmation. I'm a horse breeder too. You got to have good confirmation, otherwise you're not going to have a horse. So I feel the same way about dogs. They need to be properly conformed. Like they can't be too straight in the hocks. You don't want too long of a back. You want a balanced dog. And granted, my dogs, like my female, wouldn't finish in the show ring. She's too small. But Mindy's bitch did, and Mindy finished her herself. Mindy likes the shows. She likes to go and hang out with her friends. I don't. It's not my thing. But she actually finished. She ran her, showed her utility bitch, got her show championship, all shown by her, and then got her utility prize one the same year. So that's pretty impressive. And did it
Wow.
herself too. Yeah, all trained by us. Trained by her, just like all my dogs are trained by me.
That's great. And what's really cool about that, if you're getting a utility prize one, you're spending a lot of time out in the field.
Right.
Sometimes your dogs can get beat up a little bit from from being out in the field, so that's got to be tough to to go from the field into the show ring. And I know that the judge shouldn't be looking at those things, but we all know that they do. It's hard not to, right?
Well, so Mindy's way smarter than me, really. She actually put her bitch in the show ring in January. And then she showed her, I think she finished like in just a few months, but Mindy traveled. I mean, she was smart. She checked out what shows and what judges would like dogs like ours that are not straight show dogs. And she finished that bitch in Texas with a 5 point major, all shown by her entirely. So no
Wow,
pros. Yeah.
that's
So by the
awesome.
time training started in the spring, she was all done. And she just went on and ran her in utility.
Smart then.
Like I said,
That's why you've got her on the payroll, right?
you got it. No, our philosophies are so the same that they used to be my neighbors. They rented my old house. And so we just walk up and down the driveway. And initially she started her own kennel. And the more we talked, I mean, her philosophy is identical to mine. So I finally said to her, "How come you never wanted to be a part of Timberdoodle?" And she said, "Well, I wouldn't presume." And our thought process is so the same that it just makes sense. So, so yeah, when I'm gone, she'll carry it on.
Good to know that what you started is gonna continue.
Yes, I very much so.
So you've been hunting over Weims for a while.
A long time, a long time.
I'm not gonna say a long time. You said a long time.
It was a long time.
I'm gonna put you on the spot and ask you to tell me an interesting or funny or scary or some sort of a hunting story that stands out to you.
Well, I had a puppy owner that got a puppy from us, and he loved his dog so much that he reached out to the American Gun Dog people, Harley Jackson. I don't even know if you've ever seen that show. It was quite a while ago. And they actually flew in from Utah to hunt with us. So they filmed our dogs for 3 days, hunted with us. It was a down cycle of grouse, so we didn't move that many grouse. We did move some, we did shoot a few, but we ended up, because of the kennel name Timberdoodle, we ended up doing a heck of a woodcock show.
Sure.
So it was a lot of fun. I mean, we got to know those guys really well. I mean, we're having dinner and drinks at night with them, and just a lot of fun. And it was great for the dogs. I mean, they got some great video of Cody and one of Cody's sons, and Royal's mother Velvet was on there. So all these dogs that have long gone were featured in that show. So it was pretty cool. I still can't believe the puppy owner convinced them to. We were like, "What? What?" I mean, we couldn't believe these people were coming in to walk with us through the Michigan grouse woods with a film crew. And they did. They followed us every day.
Now, so going back that far and thinking about their, sort of pseudo celebrity status from your perspective, did you ever think that the table would have turned at some point and you'd have kind of pseudo celebrity status in the dog world?
No, I didn't. So it was really funny because they basically told us we did not know what to expect when we were coming to Michigan to hunt over Weims. Because, Harley said, you know, Weims are like not seen as hunting dogs. They're seen more as show dogs. And you'll see them like in the front seat of a SUV at the Piggly Wiggly. And they were blown away, really. They had such a good time and really enjoyed watching the dogs. And, so yeah, no, I would have never seen that one coming ever.
What's awesome is just that, the contribution that you've made towards, towards the breed, of course, right? But then to sporting dogs as well. And I've said it more than once. I love having women on the show because well, first of all, you guys are better trainers than men. I'm sure you already knew that, but we talk about it a lot, and I don't have empirical evidence to show it, but I have my own perspective, my own observations. You guys also help build community, right? And if we were to think about the stereotypical hunter, it's going to be an old guy, right? Think about the stereotypical dog trainer is probably going to be an old guy, but our community is not getting any bigger. And in order to preserve our pastime of, hunting and training, running dogs, or all these things, we have to make sure that we build our community as big as
Right.
possible. So I really appreciate everything that you and Mindy are doing.
We're trying. Mindy's a lot younger than me, so she's going to be around a lot longer than me. So it's all good.
That's great. What other standout dogs can you think of in your Weim career besides I know you mentioned Cody is kind of the one you started with and may have been one of your best, but what are some other ones?
Royal was phenomenal too. That girl and Royal's brother Logan, who was owned by a very good friend of mine and his family, phenomenal grouse dogs. Randy, who owned Logan, Royal's brother, basically told me once when he hunted over Royal, he said she's better than Logan, which is hard to believe because that dog probably had hundreds of grouse shot over him. So Royal was phenomenal. Royal's mother was a hell of a pheasant dog. I'm proud of every dog that I've ever produced or that I've ever run myself. They all have their good qualities and all have brought good things to the table. Right now I have a 4-year-old male who's just an incredible duck search dog. He's the type of dog that you open the kennel and he's out there and he's out there until he brings every duck out there in, or he will search just to search. I mean, he's that dog. So that water love thing that I didn't have early on, I
Sure.
definitely have it now.
You found it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've built up. Um, so yeah, I've had some great dogs over the years. Really, I've had a couple that really were not event dogs, but were really good hunting dogs. And I can always use that. I mean, I do guide, and I really, and sometimes in the season, I can't have enough dogs. Really, you know what I mean?
Oh,
I'm
sure.
they're getting tired and burned out, and I have an 11-year-old dog right now who's probably one of the finest pheasant dogs, and I've had many good pheasant dogs, but that dog, he puts on a clinic when he is at the preserve or even out hunting birds out west. I mean, that dog just gets it. He knows when to push them, when not to push them. Um, Sadly, he ended up with that virus that went around last winter, and he's done. He's 11 years old, and his hunting career is over. But he was a
Mm.
heck of a dog in his day too. So
When you talk about a pheasant dog versus a grouse dog, and I mean, obviously the covers are different, but both birds are going to run. What do you think makes a dog a better pheasant dog versus a grouse dog?
So my 11-year-old, who I just spoke about briefly, told me in no uncertain terms a couple of years ago that he did not care about grouse at all. And I'll tell you the story. This dog will track a running pheasant. You can't pry him off of that thing. Like, I mean, he with a crowbar, you could not get him off that thing. He will just work it. I had some people I was helping, mentoring in just to get grouse dogs started, and they had a Vizsla. I had Goose, who was my 11-year-old, in the woods with me. Never a good idea. And I hear the Vizsla guy say, bird, whatever, and it was a crossing shot on a grouse, so I took it and I dropped it, but I knew it wasn't dead. I knew it probably could run. I called that dog in to put him on this running grouse, and he literally took the track for about 2 feet, looked me dead in the face, and took off. And I'm like, I mean, this is a dog that I've watched work wounded pheasants for 400 yards, and he will not come off of it. I mean, he will not come off of it until he's got the cripple. He wanted nothing to do with that thing. So I had to get saved by the Vizsla. And the Vizsla
Oh.
ate the bird.
Uh,
Yeah. So yeah, so and I tell people that that's his thing. I mean, he likes sharptail, he likes pheasants. He just is not a woods dog and doesn't care about them. And I know he had the bird because he took the track. I saw it run. I knew he had it, and he's like, "Yeah, no, no, this is not my thing." So he hasn't been in the woods since. That was a humiliating experience, I can tell you.
Nobody ever wants to be saved by the other dog, right? But
Never, never.
probably my best friend runs a Vizsla, and so if I ever had to be saved by a Vizsla, I'd probably never hear the end of that one.
So well, if your buddy runs, yeah, you wouldn't. No, the bitch that was on the ground was a really nice dog. She just really had not really been on grouse. So she pointed it beautifully, but then So that was a bit of an issue, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I guess
So
you
that
really
was
weren't saved at the end of the day. You could
no,
always you could always fire back on that one.
yeah. So yeah, he's yeah, that was his last woods foray. My 4-year-old's a really nice grouse dog though, so I do have one of those.
Camille, I've kept you on here for a while. Is there anything else you'd like to add about Weimaraners? Anything we didn't talk about, or anything maybe I should have asked you?
No, not that I can really think of. I think, people are either going to like them or they're not. There have been over the years some not so nice, not so good Weims. And they definitely could be the butt of jokes, like when people, oh, it's a Weim, roll the eyes and all that stuff. There's a reason for that. There was a time when, really good Weims were hard to find. So you're seeing people really, really try. I like that trend that I'm seeing instead of just breeding a bunch of dogs that are sick or, not going to ever hunt, that type of thing.
How can people contact you if they want to find more about Timberdoodle Wimes or
All they have to do is do a search for hunting Weims and we pop up. From what I've heard, it's pretty high too. So,
well, that's exactly how I found you. So
oh, okay.
I don't remember if I said hunting Wimes or if I said field Wimes, one of the two, but yeah, you were the first one that came up and
It
I
does.
looked all
We
through
do
your
pop.
website and yep. So, well, thanks so much, Camille, for being on the show and for taking some time out of your day. And I know probably want to get back to some puppies. So,
Yeah, they're both sleeping right now, so that's actually a good thing.
well, maybe get back to something else then before they wake
Yeah.
up, right?
There you go.
All right. All right. Thanks so much, Camille.
Nice to talk. Night.
I hope you enjoyed episode number 27 of the Wool Post podcast. If you did, remember to leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Remember to follow us on Facebook or Instagram at the Wool Post and become a patron at patreon.com/the Wool Post. If you own a bird dog related business and you'd like to advertise on the Wool Post, you can contact me at bill@thewoolpost.com. Stay steady and God bless.